This is JMD Mateus, and you're listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast.
Hello, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 115, and you're with your High Priest of Khonshu host, Ray, tonight, coming through on the airwaves and also broadcasting live on our Get Vocal channel. So we are actually simulcast on YouTube, on Facebook, and on our Twitter account. So if you're fortunate enough to catch this live, pop on in, drop a line, and we can have a chat. Anyway, I am flying solo this episode. It looks like Khonshu, my brother in arms, I told him not to have the water. He's taken a little sip from the water, from the tap, and he's now cavorting around, acting like a werewolf, causing mayhem on the streets. So it's just myself this evening, I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm still kind of fresh and abuzz with coming back from one of the comic book conventions here in Australia. The only one I've been to for the last, 27 years. So it's been a long time between drinks, but it was a massively fun day. Anyway, I'm here for some Moon Knight action, but I'd like to give a little round out to the day. A little shout out, obviously, to, of course, my friend Dave of Finn, who I went to the comic book convention with, Oz Comic Con. Very, very fun indeed. Anyway, Loonies, we are here tonight. Always with it. Episode 115. We have a LUNAR-PICK review tonight. It's a classic book review. I'll be looking at one of Moench's earlier runs in his volume 1, so it will be Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 8, The Night of the Wolves. So it's been a while since we kind of reviewed a classic run, so it should be good to get stuck into. But before any of that, as I mentioned earlier, let's kick off the show. As I said, we are simulcast right now. If you go to our Facebook group, if you're a member, or if you pop onto Twitter and look up at ITK Moon Knight, you can see me there, myself, with a face for radio, out on the airwaves there for you. It should be fun. Drop us a line if you want. I've got the messages kind of thing open here, so if anyone wants to drop a line, that's pretty cool. If not, if you're happy to listen, that's good too. So, anyway, all of that kind of aside, one of the big things that did happen today, look, I'm still fresh from the Oz Comic Con convention. I caught an early train this morning, left the house at about 7:20 in the morning. It was a bit over an hour by train. Had to change trains twice to get to the destination. I met up with fellow collective member Dave Finn. We spent a good slab of time at the Oz Comic Book Convention, browsing the back issues, the collectibles, the trades, and we did a bit of a recce first, which was pretty cool. It wasn't too busy first thing in the morning, so that was good. Mid-morning, we caught Hayley Atwell on a panel presentation, a bit of a Q&A with her, so that was pretty fun. She had a fair few questions lobbed at her, which she responded with much aplomb, so she did very well, very personable, everything you'd expect from the actor who played Peggy Carter, so that was quite fun as well. There was a lot of cosplaying. My partner Eve wanted me to actually take some photos of myself with some of the cosplayers, and there were plenty out there. Look, I wasn't able to drum up enough courage to to actually go up to them and ask a photo, although I did with one. So I do have one where I get a photo with a Kate Bishop cosplayer, which was pretty cool. I kind of singled her out because I had my Hawkeye shirt on as well, and I don't know if you, not many of you know, but yeah, I do like Hawkeye as well. So it was pretty cool to have a photo with her. But there were like plenty of cosplayers there, a lot of Mortal Kombat, pop culture, like as in Ghostbusters. I'm just rattling off. We were a lot of manga and anime. I didn't even recognise who they were. There was an Optimus Prime. I wanted to have a photo there for my good co-host Khonshu and Rebecca, because I know they're big Transformers fans. But I was Dave and I were seated at a bench, and he was slightly off into the distance. So before I could whip out my smartphone, he had disappeared. That was pretty cool. There were a lot of Spider-Man, Spider people, a lot of Spider-Verse characters, which was really cool to see. There was even a gang of, gang of friends, and they made their own versions of Spider-Man. So there seemed to be like a Captain America coloured Spider-Man suit. There was the Ultimate Spider-Man. There was Spider-Gwen. It was really cool. So the cosplay was a nice highlight. As for swag, now look, I'll put this up on some of the social platforms. I did check out some Moon Knight. There were a lot of Volume 1s. I've gotten all of Volume 1 already, so that was fine. I did see the Marvel Spotlight Moon Knight one. That went off for a pretty penny, I must say, so I wasn't eager to relinquish that amount of coin for that issue, just because I came in with a set amount to spend. But I did end up with, three varied things. I bought about 10 issues of Quasar, a big Quasar fan. A big shout out to the boys over at the Quantum Zone Quasar podcast. I've noticed they've just joined our group as well, so welcome to Matt, Will, Phil is already in the group, and a big welcome to Rob Southgate, the producer of Capes and Lunatics. They are fellow collective members. Really good to have you guys with us. But yeah, very happy to pick up some cheap issues of Quasar, which was good. I was very happy with Dave. I mentioned I found in a stall a couple of the Amazing Spider-Man Epic collections, so I'm going to shout out Curtis Findlay as well from the Epic Marvel podcast. I love that show. If you haven't listened to that podcast, please do. And anyway, I found the one on Cosmic Spidey with the Axe of Vengeance. I was so happy with that because it's out of print at the moment, very hard to find. And another one called Ghosts of the Past, which have earlier Amazing Spider-Man issues. So got a couple of them for a neat price. Kind of kicking myself. I did see the Epic Collection of Silver Surfer, the Infinity Gauntlet. In hindsight, maybe I should have picked that one up, but, there was plenty there to buy. And finally, again, one of my faves, I managed to track down a Marvel Legends figure of Hercules, more notably the Dan Abnett run recently, which was, I think, 2016 or 17, looking very cool. One of the best looking Marvel Legends figures, I reckon, out there at the moment. So very happy. And again, I saw another one which was on my checklist, Forge. I was thinking of getting Forge as well because he's quite hard to find here in Australia, but I decided to keep that green in the wallet. So, but still happy with my purchases. Very, very good. A really fun event. I've heard that the Australian comic book conventions are, not up to scratch, so to speak, with the ones in America and the US. That could still well be the case, but look, I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. And again, a big shout out to Dave. It was a lot of fun going around with someone who, we can kind of bounce off comments here and there. And Dave had a look at some of the collectibles and some wearables, some clothing. So it was good to just hang out there, and the hours flew by. So Highly recommend Oz Comic Con for Aussies out there. $35, I think, for one day. It's on again in Sydney. It's on tomorrow on the Sunday. I'm recording on the Saturday right now. It's on the 29th, as well as it's a nationwide thing. So check the website, ozcomiccon.com, for any details. So that's kind of what's happened recently. As usual as well, usually ask between the co-hosts what it is we've been reading, catching up on. Look, again, sound like a bit of a broken record. I am reading a bit more Hercules again. Very cool. Greg Pak really gets into his Greek mythology. That's been pretty cool. I have still to catch up with my current pull list, but that's okay. I'm just trying to think. I added, Strike Force, which was out this past week. I put that on the list. I'm looking forward to reading that. Any Loonies out there that read it, let us know. I'm a bit of a fan of Blade and Spider-Woman, so that should be pretty cool. But no, haven't been reading much. A bit more of the Operation Galactic Storm, which has been a lot of fun. And just been reading for the show, the Classic Run, issue 8. And we'll get to that very soon. Also, just, again, a little bit of idle chat. There's been a challenge put up by one of the show's good friends, Phil Me Perich, host of Capes and Lunatics, host of the Ultimate Spidercast, host of Quantum Zone, the Quasar podcast. He's put up a challenge. He wants a debate of a comparison between Moon Knight and Man-Bat. The other guy. And anyway, it sounds like a bit of fun. We're just trying to work out logistics. I'll put it up to some Loonies. Let's see if they want to weigh in. So I know Phil and I believe his co-host Lilith will be up for the challenge, up for the debate. Just looking for a moderator. But also, I think I've got a couple of Loonies who might be keen to represent Into the Night and represent Moon Knight. It should be a bit of a fun thing. There's been a few shots fired from either camp, just playfully done, over social media. We try not to, although we are very passionate about our team, so to speak, it's all done in good nature and good fun. We don't want to insult anyone. So it's going to be basically a debate. I believe it's not going to be a who would win a fight. It's more with regards to comparing, personalities, fighting skill, you name it. So there'll be a comparison between both and a moderator to adjudicate the winner. So that's coming probably in late October. It should be a fun one. Keep your eyes peeled on social media, both on the ITK community, posts, and also potentially, I'm pretty sure, in the Capes and Lunatics web, Facebook group and Facebook pages and Twitter as well. So just, keep note of that. That should be a lot of fun. Now, Loonies, there's a bit light on news as usual, so heading into our white noise, our news segment. Look, I've only put in a couple of really kind of tangential bits of news here. I wanted, obviously, to filter out there are numerous articles on fan casting, rumours, blah, blah, blah. We've kind of done that to death. We want to try and get some interesting stuff rather than some repetitive stuff. There are ad nauseum things on Keanu Reeves and casting, and I saw again Ross Marquand from The Walking Dead, someone rehashing his words, months ago about him wanting to play Moon Knight. It's all old news. But what I wanted to put here, though, was I read in an article, I can't remember, I think it's Comic Book Resources or something, that a couple of scenes from Black Widow, the movie coming out next year, were shot in Morocco. Now, this could have relevance, twofold. Again, this is just speculation, but apparently the Shang-Chi movie, part of it is set in Morocco as well, so there could be a nod or a reference to Shang-Chi in the Black Widow movie, so keep your eyes out for that, which would be pretty cool. More importantly, you loonies would be well aware that Moon Knight has his origins in North Africa, so would we get some sort of reference to Moon Knight in Black Widow? Now, if you ask me, I say it's a bit of a stretch, but now with the Moon Knight show announced on Disney Plus, who knows? There could be something as tangential as those comments made in the Captain America films about a guy in Cairo or something to that effect. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. It would be interesting, it would be fun to hear any mention. And added to that as well, this is from Screen Rant, another bit of speculation. They reckon that in Black Panther 2 there may be an introduction of Khonshu. Now, I don't know where the basis of this came from. We do know the association Moon Knight has with Black Panther, in the comics at least, and with the gods, with Bust and with Khonshu. So there is some credibility to this rumour. But look, I don't think the script for Black Panther 2 has been released. I'm not sure how developed it is. I'm not sure how a reporter got information on it. So take it with a grain of salt. But those are the only two bits of news I could find over the interwebs, to do with Moon Knight that seemed at least half interesting. So that's a bit of the news. Very quick over there. Now another segment, another short one, and this a little shout out here to High Priest of Khonshu Rebecca, who passed this on. Again, this is a very tenuous link to Moon Knight, but it's worth it. We previously have had Loonies who were requesting that any appearance of Moon Knight in the comics be flagged, whether it be in our community on the Facebook group or on the podcast. So we've got a little bit of a night watch here. This is a new little segment where we flag any appearances of Moon Knight in comics, whether it be his own title or a small role somewhere else. And this one is Black Panther and the Agents of Wakanda, issue 3. Now, this will be out November 13th, so Loonies, please make note of that. The title of this new arc, it's the first 2 issues of Black Panther Agents of Wakanda, very short 2-issue arc. The 3rd issue starts something afresh. It's called God Loves, Moon Kills. Now, a bit of a play on God Loves, Man Kills, but with the moon in there, the question is there any reference to Moon Knight or to Khonshu or to anything? Now, I had a little sneaky peek at the cover to this issue 3, and it looks like they are literally going to the moon. So Black Panther, Gorilla Man, Kazar, Okoye, and the other members, I think they all go to the moon. So that could be the direct reference to this title of this arc, and there may not be any Moon Knight at all, but it is worth, I think, just noting, just in case. So if you want to get every single appearance of Moon Knight, he could appear on that. We'll keep close tabs on that and we'll let you know, but that's still a while to go, November 13th. Just a couple of other issues of note, Loonies, for our night watch, potentially. No guarantees that Moon Knight will appear. The first one is this week. Contagion #1 comes out, of course. That is written by Ed Brisson with art by Roge Antonio. Cover artist Juan Jose Rip, one of my favourites. And that's coming out potentially. It might have Moon Knight in it. We know Moon Knight is on the cover of issue 4, so it might be worthwhile checking out issue 1 for all you completists out there. Second, Actually, the other comic that comes out this week would be Punisher 16, and again, this is just a guess, and it's no guarantee. We saw Moon Knight in issue 15. This is by Matthew Rosenberg and Simon Kudransky. Issue 16, this, I think, kind of wraps up Punisher's throwdown with Baron Zemo. We saw Moon Knight and Ghost Rider and the rest kind of left behind. There's a small chance that Moon Knight might pop up here. So again, just to flag that for you Looney completists out there that want to potentially grab all the appearances of Moon Knight, keep your eyes out for those. And that's for our Night Watch. Okay, Loonies. Now we're talking streamlined here. We are talking streamlined. Let me just double check. Okay. Now our next segment is a spectacle. And this spectacle is kind of like our shout-outs, a little nods to Loonies out there and to friends of the show out there that we want to give a special shout-out to. So one moment, let me just grab a little swish of this fine vino here, pretty much like Crawley in the issue 8. Bit of a parched sensation in the throat. Not really, just an excuse to have a slurp. Okay, so spectacle. First one now. This is long overdue. I would love to give a shout out to Looney Everett Starr. Now, Everett, you've been very patient. I appreciate it, and I said I'd give you a shout out because your kind words are just so welcomed. So thank you very much. In early September 9th, on the Facebook page, Everett dropped a line and he said, "You guys are doing a wonderful job on this podcast. You have inspired me to read everything over from the beginning. Moon Knight is my favourite street-level character. No one beats the Knight. I can't wait for the show." You share our sentiments indeed, Everett. Thank you very much for those kind words and for chatting with you a little as well on some other posts. For sure, cannot wait for the show. I can't wait for more Moon Knight in comics, to be honest, as well. We have that Serpent War coming up in December, I think. We have Contagion just around the corner. I really hope Moon Knight plays a decent part in that, and I really hope he's not just a bit of a filler. But Serpent War will be fun because it's got Set, the God of Chaos. So we're set up for some pretty cool stuff, and no doubt with the TV show coming, we are going to get more, collections, more trades. Dare I say, will we finally see a collection of Mark Spector Moon Knight? That would be awesome. 60 issues. It's got to run over at least 2 complete collections. Hopefully we'll get that soon. But no, thank you, Everett. Thank you so much for that. Also, a very late message that's just come in today, and I wanted to add it in. This came in from CMK7 from our YouTube channel, and he or she mentions, "Great show, guys. How have I not known of this channel before? Moon Knight and comics. A lot of your predictions were right on the money as well. Subscribed." And CMK7 is referring to our episode 110, where all the high priests and Chad as well, and Tommy, we all... was Tommy in that one? I think he was in another one. Chad, at least I believe, we all speculated about Kit Harington, about the TV show once it was announced. So that was a very fun episode. We were all lit as hell with that. We were all kind of on a high still from that announcement. So thank you very much, CMK7. Another spectacle shout out will have to go to one of our good friends, Corey Hardiman. So a big hello to Corey, who's been a long time listener and a long time member, a long time loony. I've got to come up with a nickname for Corey. I think he's deserving of one right about now. I'll have to figure one out. But anyway, Corey was very generous. He got in touch with the show, said how much he loved the show, how much he loved the reviews, and he's actually doing an independent comic himself. So you can check out his Facebook page, Sister Mercy. It's an independent comic book. He's just about to release issue 1 out into the world, and he gave us a preview copy. Now, Corey as well has requested that the High Priest review his issue 1. So I have forwarded it on to Rebecca and to Connor. We have all read it, and we're just going to find an appropriate time in one of the future episodes to give it a review, Corey. So if you're listening, we are very much keen and able to give you a review, and I urge other Loonies as well to check out Sister Mercy. It's very different, obviously, to Moon Knight. It's based in a post-apocalyptic kind of era. Think Mad Max, and think of a nun who, is a warrior as well. So graphic, violent. First issue. It should be exciting. We'll get onto it, Corey. Don't you worry. And for anyone keen, check out the show notes. It will have a link there to the Facebook page for Sister Mercy. On top of that as well, I want to give a spotlight. Friend of the show, Scott Weatherly, host of 20th Century Geek podcast. Now, some of you would know myself and Dave Finn. We guested on his show. We did a Predator retrospective, which was a lot of fun in 2 parts. Scott has just released on episode 89, which is fairly new. He's released a spotlight on Moon Knight, so part 1. So he goes into a really broad but a very respectful, I think, overview of Moon Knight in comic book canon. And anyway, so that's out now. You should check it. Again, check the show notes, 20th Century Geek, episode 89. But tomorrow night, I will be guesting on his show for part 2, and that will drop sometime during the course of the following week. So that will be fun. I'll be up there with Scott. For those of you that don't know, Scott is a massive, I would level him up there with another good friend, Anthony Sitko, as an Amiga level Looney. Look, there are a fair few Amiga level Loonies in our community, and by Amiga level I do mean that I think to qualify for that you've got to at least have every single issue of Moon Knight that's ever existed and then some, and I think Scott has that. I know Anthony Sitko has Italian versions of Moon Knight. He's got pretty much all the appearances of Moon Knight. I believe he's got the cameo appearances. He's got commissioned artwork, all that pizzazz. So you know you're a hardcore loony when you go full pelt and get everything you can on Moon Knight. And Scott is definitely that sort of fan. So it'll be fun to chat with him. I'm looking forward. I don't know what to expect, but I can't wait to talk through the Moench run, the more modern runs, of course, the recent run of Bemis, and what lies ahead with the TV show and future titles. So that will be a lot of fun. Check that out if you can. A couple of other things just to round off our spectacle. Some of you may have noticed as well. Shortly after the ITK episode 114 dropped, early this week or last weekend, there was another bonus episode of Roundtable Robin, as Tommy the Man on the Streets calls it, the Revenge of the Vengeance. This is part 2 of our Into the Night special episodes where the Loonies take the reins and they take over the show, basically. So, you don't have any of the boring high priests in your ear. It's all just you guys, the Loonies, and they talk about anything and everything that they want to. And in part 2, we have Tommy the Man on the Streets. We have Noel Looney Tunes Tate. He's on there. Those of you will know he is the front man for Deleter, provides the music for the show. And rounding off, we have the Rick Ball special. So all 3 of those guys, 3 disparate personalities, 3 disparate identities, if you will. They get together and they talk many things, from Moon Knight to comics to their other loves, to collecting. It was a lot of fun. So check it out if you can. Again, in the show notes, we've got it there. And also check out part 1 if you haven't yet. And that had other Loonies Filmian Perich. It had Josh Johnson, and it also had the power of Chad. So those guys were talking about anything and everything again. A lot of fun. We might have more of them. They're just a lot of fun to do, and it's a nice spin-off to the main show. And finally, I just wanted to give a little plug to there's new ITK merchandise in our store. So at TeePublic, just check out the link in this episode. We have a limited edition certified Looney design, so you can get that on a shirt or hoodie, a singlet, a baseball shirt, and also it's available in sticker format and in like pin badges. So wear your ITK Looney identity loud and proud. Be it on your on your backpack or wearing it as a top. It's a lot of fun. It's going to be there for, again, we do rotate the design, so it'll be there for roughly about a month or so. So get in while you can. It's a lot of fun, and your support is much appreciated. All purchases go towards basically keeping the upkeep for the show. So it's not like I'm going on a holiday to Ibiza or anything like that with the earnings. It all goes straight into to keep the lights on in this show. So so it'll be very much appreciated. Now, if my iPad will stop going into lock mode, look, we will now. I think I'll take a breather, take another swirl of the old vino. And we'll hear a couple of messages from our fellow collective members. And when we come right back, we'll get into our LUNAR-PICK review. So catch you on the other side of this break.
We Are Venomaniacs is the Venom Site's official podcast for all of your symbiote news, reviews, and point of views about Venom-related comics, movies, television, animation, and merchandise. We are available on Podbean, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Google Play Music, and YouTube. Join us, won't you?
The swamp, more than merely a place. It is a churning, seething, bubbling bed of life, of which you are a part. Once you were a man, a chemist named Ted Sallis, until one little experiment went somewhat awry. And you changed. The serum that was to have made you a super soldier combined with the strange forces in the swamp to make you over into this, a shambling, mindless mockery of your former humanity. The macabre Man-Thing.
Man-Thing was created in the early 1970s to capitalize on the growing monster craze, but under writer Steve Gerber it became something quite different. Experimental, surreal, and very, very weird. It was something I loved as a kid, but does it still hold up today, 4 decades after its initial publication? So join me, Paul Matthew Carr, as I attempt to make sense of this cult classic and analyze each issue, putting it in the context of the time it was written and comparing it to the standards of today. And maybe you too can come to love the world's second most famous swamp-based comic book character as much as I do. The Nexus of All Realities, a Man-Thing podcast, a twice-monthly dive into the bizarre.
Yes, welcome back, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. This is episode 115, or as they say in Dutch, let me get this right. It's 115. Sounds pretty close to the English. I'm pretty sure I got that right. Episode 115. I gotta get up to scratch with my Dutch. Anyway, welcome back. Thank you, Loonies. You are here with High Priest of Khonshu Ray. I am also not only coming through in your earpiece, but I am currently being simulcast over on our Facebook group and our Twitter page And also, I don't know why I'm speaking like a ghost. I'm not I'm not dead or anything. And also our YouTube channel. So you can catch us there. You can catch me there now. I know I'm in Australia, so a lot of the US listeners may be well asleep. A little shout out to Puerto Rico as well. I had a little check. A few listeners in Puerto Rico. A few listeners in France. Hello, people from France. A couple from Canada. Come on, Canada. Dropping the ball there. We need more Canadians. Come on. Tell your friends. Anyway, being simulcast right now. But also, in a very raw format. I'll drop this with the post-production of music and such later on by the end of this weekend. Anyway, we are here for our LUNAR-PICK. We are here for our LUNAR-PICK classic book review. And this is Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 8, Night of the Wolves. Now, this is available in single format, in floppy. It's also available on Marvel Unlimited, as a digital copy as well on Comixology and or, Kindle would be available as well as the now out-of-print Essential Collection, which is a black and white phone book of Moon Knight issues. And also in the Epic Collection Volume 2, which is where I shall draw it from, Shadows of the Moon. Now that is also available digitally, the Epic Collection. So you've got plenty of ways to pick this up. And this is Moon Knight, Volume 1, Issue 8, Night of the Wolves, as I said, released June 1981, written by Doug Moench, art by Bill Sienkiewicz, inks by Frank Giacola, colours by Roger Slifer, letters by Joe Rosen, and edited by Denny O'Neill. Now, typically, Loonies, what we'll do is I will go through a bit of a bare bones here, a bit of a synopsis of what this is all about, and then we'll look at some aspects. So I've made some notes here on the main framework for the comic book, which would be the writing, the art, characterization, any themes, references to other runs as well. So we're going to look at a few of those. I've got a few points on each. And finish it off with a moon rating system. Look, we've got two now. There's the very finicky moon rating that I came up with, the vanilla rating with all the phases of the moon. I much prefer Khonshu's rating system, so I'm going to use that, see if we can get a pretty cool rating there. So anyway, what I'll do, I'll kick this off with a synopsis, the bare bones. This is courtesy of the Wiki page. Still under the influence of hallucinogenic gas, Moon Knight thinks that an oncoming subway train is a monster. He flattens himself against the wall as it passes, then jumps onto the roof to get to its brain and kill it. In a flash of sanity, he realizes he's on a train. He drops into a car, reaches the engineer's compartment, and knocks out the driver. On his way to his hotel to warn Marlene about the water, he hears voices from a sewer pipe, one of them Crawley's, the other a friend of Redshirt's. The friend flees at the sight of Moon Knight, but Crawley has learnt where Ernie, a member of the gang, lives. In a smoke-filled room in Washington, D.C., a group of men speculate on the possibility that the Chicago terrorist gang may strike elsewhere. In Chicago City Hall, waiting for the $25 million extortion payoff, Simon tells Fox that he sent the other two gang members to Ernie's place, ostensibly for supplies, but really in hopes they'd get killed in the chaos, which would mean bigger shares for them. At Meigs Fields, one of the men from Washington briefs the helicopter pilot who will deliver the ransom. At Ernie's place, Crawley breaks in, quickly followed by the two other gang members who are picking up bottled water. Crawley pushes a row of boxes over onto them and knocks them out. Moon Knight arrives at his hotel. The room is a mess and the bathroom sink has been left running. Marlene, hiding in the shower, stabs him twice in the back with a shard of broken glass. He knocks her out and ties her up. Crawley arrives and tells him there are only gang members the two gang members left, and they're at City Hall. At dawn, the chopper drops a sack on the roof of City Hall. Simon and Fox, wearing their masks with air filters, opens it, and a cloud of tear gas emerges but dissipates in the wind. The man from Washington orders the National Guard to assault the building. Moon Knight arrives, climbs to a rooftop, and hitches a ride on a police chopper to follow Simon and Fox's getaway car. In the car, Simon plans to poison the water supply because he didn't get his money. When Fox protests, Simon shoots him. At the reservoir, Simon has an oil drum full of poison. Moon Knight drops from the chopper and glides down to give him a body blow. The drum rolls toward the water. Simon draws a gun. Moon Knight came close with Simon or stop the drum, but not both. Or can he? He throws a dart, knocking Simon's gun out of his hand and stops the drum in the nick of time. 3 days later, Stephen Grant, Marlene, Frenchie and Crawley watch a crane pull Moon Knight's helicopter out of the lake. "C'est la vie," says Frenchie. "We wish to make some changes in design anyway, oui?" Yes, well, the Wiki could have done with a bit of editing there. A couple of dubious sentences, but that was the synopsis for Moon Knight issue 8. A very fun rollick, very synonymous with the time. We see Doug Moench's writing. It's still evolving, but there are bits there that you can identify with his later bit of writing. Anyway, to get straight into it, I'm going to go to the writing aspects of this. So this is, like, plot-wise, this is a standard holding the city to ransom storyline, and it's coupled with this whole contaminating the water, turning people into crazy, I wouldn't say zombies, but they're, just a mad crowd. So we have basically Moon Knight. His enemy is Simon and Fox, but he does come across basically people not under their own wits, and to me it's kind of like a zombie scenario because he's up against a mass amount of people, and they're kind of brainless and mindless. It's a very simple plot, but what I had to mention here with Moench, he does create a simple plot, but he also, and he does this a few times in this run, he employs a huge cast to keep things interesting. So there are always moving parts to this. You've got Moon Knight, who has to ward off, he's been under the spell of the drugs. He has to ward off these crazed people, crazed Chicago citizens. He's doing that, but he's also, his mission is also to look for Marlene. At the same time, we get Crawley, who has found refuge in the sewers. He becomes a great connecting point for Moon Knight to kind of further the story as well, and to give information to Moon Knight. So he's quite interesting, and he has his own adventure as well by going to Ernie's place, has a bit of a scuffle with two of the gang members. So he has kind of like his own little story as well. Moon Knight's looking for Marlene. So Marlene she needs help. She's a bit crazed as well. So we get another scene there with Moon Knight confronting Marlene, and I'll get to it a bit later. But there's a bit of an inkling there of Marlene's thought process of Moon Knight and his multiple identities, and what she may have revealed something subconsciously. Her true feelings while she was in this drug state, but we'll get to that. We've got Simon and Fox. We've got the main criminals. They're working their ransom deal. The main gist of this for this story is to collect the ransom. When it goes pear-shaped, we see Simon as a true psychopath, just starts killing, and he still wants to drop the poison into the water, into the reservoir, just because why not? Because he's either spiteful or he just really just has nothing else to lose. We also have a little insight. They're not named though, but the authorities in Washington DC, they kind of orchestrate this ransom drop off as well. So there's a fair few characters in here to keep things kind of chugging along and to bounce. So Moench, bounces between these characters to keep things moving, to keep things interesting. And I find that kind of similar with a fair few of Moench's storylines. Deceptively simple, but he uses a lot of characters. Sometimes they are overused and you do lose track when the characters aren't as well rounded out. Like in some instances there are characters similar to Simon and Fox, and these authority figures in Washington DC. They aren't really developed. In some other cases with Moench's stories, it tends to get a bit confusing and a bit convoluted with the amount that he puts in. But over here, I think it was a pretty good balance. It kept things quite fun, quite lively as well. Also with the writing here as well, I've got another point about Simon as well. He's the main antagonist. He seemed like quite an interesting character. At the end, again, he's vaguely dispatched. I mean, he just falls into the water. You assume that he gets fished out and he gets handcuffed and chucked into a police car or something. But he's quite a he's got no backstory in this writing, which makes it difficult to really understand him proper. He's got a lot of psychotic tendencies, which maybe that's explanation enough. But I think with writing, well, actually, and having said that as well, although he's the main antagonist, the main physical threats to Moon Knight in this issue were Marlene and the Chicago citizens. So it's a bit of a weird one. It's not like and there was a throwdown at the end between Moon Knight and Simon, but they're really kind of mismatched, aren't they? He's no physical threat to Moon Knight. He may have orchestrated this thing, but he really unravelled it himself. I mean, he's not trusting his other gang members. He wants them to be caught because he's greedy. He shoots Fox in the car. There are a lot of these actions which I feel probably needed a bit more development in the character to really comprehend why he's doing it. But having said that, and my previous point, there's so much happening in Moench's story anyway, I don't think there's any room for that. So what Moench gives us is basically just a distillation of what this character is, and unfortunately he doesn't come out as rounded as you'd hope. But he's not a recurring character as well, so he's quite disposable in that sense. Other bits of writing as well. So when we did review issue 7, I thought it was really cool to see how the citizens of Chicago were affected, and you get a few instances of their craziness, and I thought that was really cool. In this issue as well, it's not written in as much. There's a bit at the very beginning with Moon Knight being attacked by the Moon Kings, just by citizens of Chicago, and when he's on the train as well. That lasts, it's very fleeting. And then the danger of these maddened citizens, seems to kind of disappear. And again, I believe it's because Moench is trying to focus on these other aspects, finding Marlene, what happens to the other gang members, introducing Crawley again into it. So they're kind of again left on the wayside, these crazed citizens, and I think that's part of the appeal to this story arc. It's one of the main parts of this story. I would have loved to have seen a bit more of them in it. A little bit more interaction. There's that one bit where Crawley and Moon Knight are in the car, and I found it hilarious how... I just find it always funny how a costumed hero is behind a steering wheel like a car, like in a normal car, just driving. To me, it's tantamount to a superhero catching public transport. They're just a little bit out of context. They just seem a little less mobile than they should be, because they're always kind of like swinging away or flying away. Anyway, there is a crazy, a frenzied citizen at the back of the seat, which added a bit of a jump factor, but it would have been good to see a bit more of that as well, to give the sense that the city really is in flux. Maybe this story could have done with another issue or so, or maybe people are thinking this is quite a streamlined story as it is. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the writing. Now, if we go to the art, which will include like panel layout, the general art in general, colours and inks, the first striking thing for me are the panel borders. So we see here Sienkiewicz is playing with the panel borders. So we've got your typical standard straight panel boxes, but we've got the frayed panels, and they kind of appear when things are either in flashback or when things are a hallucination. And I just like that little touch because it just makes things seem a little less solid, with those kind of organic lines around the panel. And that was one of the immediate things that came out to me with the art. Second, actually, as I mentioned that already, Sienkiewicz uses technique to alternate. Oh, yeah, also, added to that, what we see with the storytelling is, and you see it a lot, and I'm gonna pluck out the Scarlet Redemption as an example as well, where you get these parallel kind of visuals telling different things, and Sienkiewicz does this quite a bit in here, where you see the hallucination, the image of the hallucination. Say, for instance, Moon Knight on the train, but he's on the back of a serpent, paralleled with the reality of him on the back of a train, and you see that happen a few times throughout the issue, which is a really good technique to kind of highlight what Moon Knight perceives and what the rest of the world perceives. It's also done in the flashback scene as well. A little bit of a far out. This is I didn't remember how many times Mark Spector has punched Marlene, but he does it in this issue as well. But there's also the instance where he's trying to subdue Marlene, and that's interspersed with flashbacks of him and Marlene sharing an intimate moment, a kiss. So again, we get this nice contrast that Sienkiewicz uses, and I'm sure Moench has incorporated into the script, of where we see flashbacks or the non-real with the real, and it's a nice technique that he uses in it. It's a very simple one, but it does make for some good art. The colours do make a case for that as well. Let me get out my Epic collection. So if I'm to go to, say for instance, when Mark confronts Marlene, where is it? So with the Epic collection on the page 90, if anyone's got the Epic collection, we get the blues for Mark in that dark room, trying to subdue Marlene, kind of interspersed with these flashbacks, which are more in the warmer red and pinks of them sharing a warm kiss. So the colours do it as well, to kind of evoke those contrasts. From here as well, I think, like aesthetic-wise, obviously Sienkiewicz still is developing his style. Very, very competent, obviously, he is at the moment. He has mentioned his influences are Neil Adams when he was early on, and we saw that with the early classic runs. We did the Hulk magazine, as well as we've done, the other issues like not Werewolf by Night. We've done other previous Sienkiewicz's issues, and the best way to describe it is that they're kind of more standard looking, I think, comic book art. I've got the luxury of this epic collection here, so I jumped straight to issue 23, and the art is chalk and cheese. You see Sienkiewicz really pushing the boundary of the form here, of the art form in comics, with the use of his inks, because he inks it by himself in here. Issue 8 has Frank Giacola, and it's very much looking more like a standard comic book. Surprising, because even in the Hulk magazine, Sienkiewicz's art had a different quality to it. Although it was standard, it did look like more for a mature audience, I think, because of the colouring and the inks. I believe the Frank Giacola inks here and the Slifer colours have given it more of a more of a house effect. Still very good. I mean, I still enjoy it, but what we don't see, and it's funny because in issue 1 and 2 of volume 1, Moon Knight, you can very much distinctly see the way Sienkiewicz portrays or depicts the portraiture of people, like facial expressions. Here it's a lot more simplified, and so I wonder if time had anything to do with it to affect Sienkiewicz. Again, nothing to take away from the art of issue 8. It's still great. I mean, what have I got here? Like, you only have to look at Moon Knight depicted in this issue. We're talking anatomy-wise, like body movement, fluidity. It's still great. There are still some really popping panels here. I think later on with the mini missives, Chad mentions about the way Marlene's drawn, which is really cool. But yeah, you can see Sienkiewicz has a real firm grasp of Moon Knight and how he wants to show Moon Knight. But there were some things here, like, I understand that you don't have to fill the background of each panel of everything, you know. And there are some great panels here where the background is very kind of nicely detailed and nicely coloured and inked. But there are some panels here where I can't understand, like, it's not for any effect that there's no background detail. It's just like a colour. And to me that was a little bit more noticeable. But then again, like, you get some really good, also, there's a little bit of use of light and shade here, which Sienkiewicz uses a lot later on in his issues, which is very prominent, which you do see bleed over into the New Mutants run of his as well. But look, a little reference here, page 88, there's just one panel at the top here showing a darkened room with a lamp. I'd like to think that's Sienkiewicz playing around with light and dark, with shadows, just maybe, you know, it's meant to show the darkened hotel room of Marlene. So there are little things here. Other than that, though, it's a pretty standard bit of comic book art. Dare I say, even harks back to prior 1981. There's in some instances, like the last few panels, when the characters Frenchie, Marlene, Mark, and Crawley just joke about, you know, this caper ending and them needing a new moon copter. Very classic style comic book art there. So I'm not sure whether that's intentional or not, or whether that is Frank Giacola's influence. But yeah, that's kind of what stuck out for me with the art. Okay, so theme-wise, so there are only a couple of things here. I thought Marlene, in her drug state, in page 80 of this epic collection, she alludes to her inner feelings about Mark and the effect of Mark's multiple identities and what effect they're having on her. Now, let me just read this out. Like, so she's kind of just waiting for him, you know, with a broken shard of mirror, with the water running. and she's talking to herself. She's going, "You're two different people, Stephen. Maybe three. No, make that four or more. And you're so crazy you don't know who you are. But I want you, Stephen. I want you so bad, because you've made me just like you. So crazy, I don't know who I am. So crazy that we don't want anyone but you, all four of you." So it seems her mind very much obviously is in a fractured state with the poisoned water. But is this an inkling into Marlene's inner struggle for Moon Knight? We know that she likes Stephen Grant. She always refers to him as Stephen. But she's got to carry some sort of burden by knowing that he's got these other identities which seem to be becoming more and more pronounced as this run goes on. It's no longer the mere fact of Mark Spector putting on these identities like an actor. It seems now, which we saw in the early Moon Knight, this early issues of this run, I think it was issues 3 and 4 or so, where he starts talking to Khonshu, and it becomes it seems to become more of a problem for him, or more of a struggle for him, rather than him actively just putting on these guises. So anyway, I thought maybe that there was a little bit there that Moench was trying to explore. The other theme here, I thought this was just more of a statement of the potential that was kind of missed, I think, in this theme. Now, this and issue 7 seemed like a very cool romp, because it had Moon Knight on the moon. You know, you can't get any more literal than that. Fighting Moon Kings or space, I don't know what they were. They were Moon Kings. They weren't actually werewolves. They were just these Moon King monsters. But I don't think this idea was fully realised. It may have been something that Moench stumbled on, but to have Moon Knight drugged and to think that he was on the moon and fighting these, coupled with his identity crises, I think that would have played really well. And this is issue 8. I don't think it's really explored again, but to explore this, to have this opportunity to explore the psyche of Mark, I think would have been really cool. And it's later kind of done in a way in the Lemire run, in a totally masterful way. So we're lucky we have that. But it's great that Lemire drew from this story as well. But I feel what Lemire has shown was that there was potential, and in this run, Moench hadn't fully capitalised on what he'd started out with. Characterisation. First point here, I had Moon Knight seems to shrug off the toxin more easily than the others. Having said that, I think Frenchie had to have been knocked out to get his senses back to him. Also, as well, we've got to remember Moon Knight was gassed rather than he didn't drink the water, so that may have a lesser effect on him, but he seems to shrug it off. He had a lot of trouble at the beginning of the issue. Then, without sounding like double, he doesn't seem to have much of an issue later on with it, so it just wears off. That's just something I noted. Maybe because he's stronger. Maybe he managed to heal a lot quicker. I don't know. Anyway, also as well, Moon Knight, he appears to shrug off these multiple stab wounds from Marlene. And I thought that was in keeping and consistent with him as a character, because he does receive a lot of punishment, doesn't he? But he just keeps on soldiering on. This is one of the instances of it. And I know that this is not totally a specific thing to Moon Knight. Like, there are a lot of heroes, Punisher, Daredevil, that tend to go beyond the pain threshold, and their will is more indomitable. So they're able to overcome these cruxes. But with Moon Knight, I find it is a consistent thing, and it's become his kind of thing as well. About not defending a blow, he'd rather take it. So yeah, a little nod here from Moench early on, which I think maybe a lot of writers built upon. characterization of Simon, which I mentioned before, he's portrayed as a complete psycho. He kills his accomplices. He wants to double-cross his other gang members. He's a bit of a loose cannon, bit of a loose wire. And then after, when all else fails, what does he do? He tries to escape, but he still tries to carry out his plan of poisoning the reservoir. What's he going to do? I mean, all he's going to do is cause more trouble, more headaches for the others. So, yeah, as I mentioned, he was kind of underdeveloped, but I'm not hankering to see him back, because he was essentially not that interesting a character. He had a pretty funny haircut, wasn't that memorable. But anyway, that's how he was portrayed in this. Crawley, again, proves himself to be invaluable to Moon Knight. Again, he provides the information. He actually gets his hands dirty. He knocks out the two other gang members who we assume were rounded up shortly after. He comes up with the information of finding out where Ernie lives, where the poison was being manufactured. So yeah, a very invaluable accomplice for Moon Knight as well. Crawley and Marlene always tend to be the ones that, without them, the cases really wouldn't be solved. Or actually, I mean more that with Crawley. Marlene tends to save Mark out of trouble. Crawley seems to be the one that is absolutely essential in solving these cases. So it's good to see Crawley have a good part in this. Similar to issue 7 as well, where he actually gives a heads up to Moon Knight about this whole thing. And also with characterization, one of the final points, there doesn't seem to be any signs yet of the relationship breakdown between Mark and both Frenchie and Marlene. So apart from obviously Marlene going a bit cray-cray and trying to kill Mark under the influence of the poison, they seem still very much in love. Frenchie is tied up happily on a yacht somewhere after going a bit crazy and wanting to be restrained so he doesn't. And Mark wanting to restrain him to stay out of trouble. We don't see any of that. We don't see any of those kind of tension, the tension between these cast members so far. It even ends, I've got here a note, with almost a Scooby-Doo ending. As a gang, they laugh off the adventure they just had, and they laugh about, we need a new design for the Mooncopter anyway, which they sorely needed as well. A couple of those early Mooncopter designs were abominable, but I think of the time, I really do enjoy the Mark Spector Moon Knight moon. I think it's not even a copter; you call it a moon jet. It's kind of like a sideway crescent moon, which is pretty cool. But anyway, characterization. Now, finally, references to any other runs, and the only one which I mentioned before is. There is Moon Knight does have a stint on the moon as well in Volume 8, issues 6 to 9. It's the Incarnations arc by Jeff Lemire and Greg Smallwood and James Stokoe, Wilfred Torres, and Francesco Francavilla. It's one of the absolute best runs you can read and look at. Art-wise, it's just magnificent. It's top-level comics. It's how comics. It shows how comics can be. Absolutely fantastic. We reviewed it ages ago when Khonshu and I did the whole Lemire run. Go check it out, the earlier episodes. But yeah, there was a reference there. They referenced Space Wolves. Actually, Lupinar, which was a character from the Hulk magazine. Lemire kind of mishmashed everything together. And you had Mark Spector, like a space jet fighter on the moon. So a little reference, not entirely exactly like this issue, Night of the Wolves, but there is a mix. I mean, this whole thing about people going mad and thinking that they're kind of like wolves or werewolves. That's where the title of this issue comes from. And then with the Lemire run, you're getting the space wolves out on the moon. Again, like I said, it's a bit of a mishmash of everything, but I believe it is strongly linked to one another there. So anyway, Loonies, that was the issue. Those were some of the points that I came up with this issue. A very fun issue, something that I would revisit again. It's again one of those dated ones. It's a thing of the time. Certainly, I do enjoy Sienkiewicz's art. I really do enjoy the latter Volume 1 issues of Moon Knight when Moench and Sienkiewicz really come into their own. But these are fun. These are... then you don't get comic books like this these days as well. Just classic things. You got to suspend your disbelief very much to an extent. There are some shortcomings though with development, and there is a trap that Moench sometimes puts a little bit too much into the story, and things become really busy just for the sake of being busy with a very simple plot. But this was this was very enjoyable. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10 for this. So with Khonshu's rating system, that is a solid round boy again. So a good 7 for that. So go check it out, Loonies, if you can. We're going to go to another short break to hear from some other friends of the show and collective members, and when we come back, I've just got some feedback from some of the Loonies, so catch you then.
Hi, this is Chris.
And this is Brian.
And we are the hosts of Inner Demons, the Ghost Rider podcast.
And you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcast apps for all your Ghost Rider needs.
Right on.
Hello, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And we're hosts of Capes on the Couch, the podcast where comics get counseling.
Superheroes don't always get to go home happy. That's where we come in.
We offer psychiatric and mental health analysis of comic book characters.
So check us out at capesonthecouch.live and across all social media platforms at Capes on the Couch.
Yes, welcome back, Looney listeners. You are listening to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. This is the High Priest of Khonshu, Ray. And that was my review of Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 8. A very fun review, 7 out of 10, small, round, solid round boy. Check it out. I'm really hoping one day to get to a full moon. Or actually, I really want to see a really bad issue. I want to be able to mark something a crumb of a moon. That's pretty cool from Connor's rating system. Anyway, as mentioned, we have a bit of feedback here. And the first one comes from our Facebook page. It's from Steve Murphy, and he says that is one awesome cover. Yeah, I forgot to actually mention the cover. The cover is very kick-ass. It's actually used in the front cover to the Epic Collection, Volume 2. Very cool cover. Very crazed looking Moon Knight there. I love his flowing moonlight cape from Sienkiewicz. You've got the moon, you've got the wolves. I mean, it's a little misleading from what happens inside, but it's a very cool, the way Moon Knight is haunched over and cackling and laughing. It's pretty cool. And the ripped mask, which you don't see that often. You see a lot of that with Spidey. It's used in great effect here with Moon Knight. One of the things I forgot to mention, with again Sienkiewicz's art, with how good he portrays Moon Knight, you've essentially got a guy, I guess it's similar to Spider-Man and any other cape person, but you do rely on the body, the body movements to evoke the emotions, and I think Sienkiewicz does it really well with Moon Knight's movements in these issues, as well as all the other issues to come as well. He's really got a good grasp on the character. But anyway, thank you for that, Steve Murphy. Now we go on to our Facebook group, and there's a few from here. So I'd like to start off with Josh Heselton, and he's come up with 5 points, 5 aspects. He writes in, somewhat missed opportunity when hallucinating Moon Knight did not have a direct encounter with our werewolf masked wearing antagonist. He didn't, but towards the end he kind of did. I know what you mean though. The mob even howled like wolves, and this could have been a good callback to some werewolf history for the character and his own recently perceived power loss from werewolf venom wearing off. That's a very good point. There is obviously a connection between Moon Knight and werewolves. Why wasn't that kind of utilised? Very, very good point, Josh. That's another potential missed by Moench, I think, in this instance. His second point, such a good scene with Moon Knight hallucinating, and it parallels reality and his experience in those moments. I think, as I mentioned, I believe, as the alternating panels. The imagery of the Moon Kings and Moon Knight feeling helpless as a knight against a king was fascinating for me. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't pick that up myself. The Moon Kings to me looked more like just zombies or ghouls. But they were referred to as Moon Kings. I didn't pick up that connection. Good one. Third point, somewhat similar, there is the scene of Moon Knight going to save Marlene, getting stabbed from behind by Marlene from the shadows, and she playfully runs away, taunting Stephen to have Moon Knight find her. He ends up knocking her out while saying he loves her, with panel showing a remembered tender moment along with the violence. Yep, this is the contrasting panels again. The violence is in darkness with a blue and black colour palette, while the romantic moment is portrayed in flesh and pink. Rose-coloured glasses. I love it. Rose-coloured glasses. To me, just the warmer colours. Red, pinks, a lot more warmer. In this instance, a lot more positive. While as the cold blues and blacks, I think evoked that darkened room and the tense moment of the two. So, but yeah, definitely rose-coloured glasses. Point 4, Crawley gets a badass moment dropping bottled water boxes on the goons, but then forgets to look for danger in the back seat of the vehicle in Chicago at night, when anyone drinking tap water has turned into a howling, violent rage monster. Yep, good point as well. They both missed that. Moon Knight and Crawley, it's one of those tropes you see in movies and TV and in comics where you just never check the back seat. Schoolboy error there for both Crawley and Moon Knight. And finally, all the sad and pained Moon Knight portraits throughout the issue would be great to screenshot for reaction images. And yep, just going on with what I mentioned about the mastery of Sienkiewicz's art and how he can evoke emotion with Moon Knight, with just the two eyes and basically his whole body. So thank you for that, Josh. Thanks for writing in. We have our second one from Noel Looney Tunes Tate. And Noel writes in, he says, classic Moon Knight comic. It's a lot more noir than I remember it being. Although the story is simple, it's these 1 and 2 off issues that drew me into Moon Knight in the first place. Moench always has had a good sense of old school pulp or almost EC Comics horror crime anthology vibes to his Moon Knight stories. Very cool idea to combine the noir, monster and horror style that made a comeback in the 70s to the peaking 80s Bronze Age style of superhero comics. Chicago-based Moon Knight stories always hook me. Hello, good morning, Luke. Got a message there from Luke. Thanks for dropping by. Anyway, Looney Tunes Tate goes on, Sienkiewicz's art is still ahead of its time, even early on. I still see the Neil Adams influence in design, dynamics, and basic illustration, but he had his own thing a lot early on than a lot of people give him credit for. Okay, so Noel has picked this up from this issue. The whole page when Marlene stabs Moon Knight is visceral and terrifying. I agree with you here, Noel, as well. I mean, again, I think it's more in the movement of the figures. You can see Sienkiewicz's art kind of really coming to its own. Aesthetically, though, yeah, I do see a lot of Neil Adams. The one panel of Moon Knight's close-up reaction after getting stabbed with a broken mirror like panel border is a favourite. That whole page, as well as the previous, look like a scene from Psycho. Overall a great trippy story by Moench and terrifying illustrations by Sienkiewicz. Classic cover as well. Very good. 8.5 out of 10. The 0.5 is for the RIP to the Moon Chopper. Long shall it live. 8.5. So Noel, let me translate that. That's a in between a big, beautiful yellow man and a full moon. So Noel giving it high praise. I think it's worth it. I mean, definitely for some readers, this would be a really enjoyable, high level comic, which is fine. And again, a nice reminder to everyone that everyone has own personal tastes, and they're all valid. So it's always great to hear these different views. Next we have The Power of Chad, and he weighs in and he says, I had a few problems with this scenario. One was Mark vaulting a subway car at full speed, 55 miles per hour, right after being gassed. It seems more than unlikely that Moon Knight could clear that while under the influence of some rather intense hallucinogens. The other issue was the population in Chicago during the early 80s was around 3 million. If even a fraction of a percent of that had gone a bit long in the tooth, there'd be no stopping the mob. Very good points there, Chad. Didn't pick up those, but yeah, for sure. I mean, Moon Knight, maybe he had Khonshu helping him to clear that train, the subway car. And look, Chicago, we're talking like Walking Dead proportions, aren't we? We're talking about thousands and thousands of crazy people. There'd be a lot more mayhem than what we saw in this story, for sure. Chad continues, on the other hand, the story was really inventive and picked up a lot of the Moon Knight support cast. Crawley was smart and didn't let his weaknesses trouble Mark. Frenchie was down through no fault of his own and was no worse for wear at the end, ever stylish with a well-trimmed moustache and a match between his lips. Marlene really shone in this one. Though crazy, she demonstrated uncanny stealth and vicious aptitude with a shard of mirror. I guess she could really see herself attacking Mark. Yeah, true. I mean, again, inner feelings. Like, does she really... she's taunting him as well, asking Moon Knight to chase her. She's quite a complex character, I believe. Further on, the action scenes were amazing as usual from Bill, the way Moon Knight sends his victims flying through the air and only ever needs one hit to land to put these constricted crazies in a coma. The cover was a bit tacky in composition, but the expression on our Avenger's face really harkens to his brother's deranged facade. Yeah, I think it's got to be for me one of the more memorable covers, and a lot of that has to do with Moon Knight's posture and his face. As you say, it could be tacky in composition as well, but if you just isolated that artwork of Moon Knight from the front cover, you're on a winner there. Winner, chicken dinner. Anyway, Chad finishes off with, I prefer Mooney in detective mode, getting real forensic and visceral in his combat tactics rather than empowered by absurd two molds of dead kings. Overall, I'd give this a 7 out of 10, a solid round boy as well, only hindered by my shallow hang-ups. Also, Marlene looks absolutely fiendish at the bottom of page 7, some Evil Dead caliber ghastly glamour. Fantastic, Chad, absolutely, for sure. So let's see, Luke's still here. I just got someone drop in to the simulcast here. Let me just see if I can see if they're still around. Anyway, those were the Mooney missives. Thank you for those loonies who wrote in. Thank you so much for following and for letting us know your thoughts. It's always good to chat on the show. Well, that pretty much wraps us, I think, loonies. It's just my lonesome here, lonesome self. I have been going on for a good while now. I hope you found the review insightful and entertaining. The synopsis, as again provided by Wiki, was very thorough. It gave you a sense of the comic, even if you don't have a copy of it. And if it has urged you to pick up a copy, by all means do. I mean, as I mentioned, 7 out of 10. It's a pretty solid score. Definitely worth checking out, even if you do read it just once. Give it a go. So thank you once again for listening. Now, next phase, we enter a first quarter phase of the moon. And I'm just reminded that, so I'm basing this on the date October 5th, and it's based on the geographical location of Cairo in Egypt. So I'm not sure if things deviate slightly depending on where you are, but October 5th, if you look out the window, it should be our first quarter, and that means we are looking at Khonshu's Idols. Now, this is our episode solely based on Moon Knight action figure reviews. So we've done a few before. We've done Funko Pops, we've done Marvel Hasbro Legends figures, and next week we'll be looking at the Mezco exclusive CRESCENT edition of Moon Knight, the 1-12 figure. And I'm very happy to announce we have another guest, Looney. He'll be joining me. His name is Brian Warshaw. What is it good for?
Absolutely. Listen to me.
So Brian will be joining me. He's a podcaster himself as well. You'll get to hear him next week. I had a fun time chatting with him, learning about new stuff. And so anyway, we'll speak to Brian and we'll go through the CRESCENT edition, the Mezco. And that the one, for those of you who don't know, Mezco have released two versions of Moon Knight. One is the white costume, which is the standard one. This CRESCENT edition is a Mezco exclusive, so you had to have ordered it through Mezco, I believe. Kind of makes it hard for people outside of the US. So I don't have one myself, but I leaned heavily on Brian, and he provided what I'll do. He gave me a whole heap of photos as well. I'll create an album. I'll put it up onto our Facebook group just before the episode next week. And you can familiarize yourself with the figure, but that should be a lot of fun. As usual, I'm gonna bow out now, but I keep on forgetting to do it, so I want to add it now in our little outro segment. We are part of the collective, so we're a band of a few like-minded podcasters who wanted a network in the most traditional sense. It's a repository for ideas, crossovers, and potential guest appearances between the podcasts, and it includes a nice slew of podcasts, really cool stuff. So ranging from a podcast about Inhumans, it's Adelan Rising, to we've got Inner Demons, a Ghost Rider podcast, there's a Namor podcast, Nexus of All Realities, a Man Thing podcast. I could go on and on. There's Uncanny Nerdverse, they do the things to do with the X-Men, Sons of the Dragon and Immortal Iron Fist podcast, the Signal of Doom, of course, and again a big shout out hello to Dave, who I went to the Oz Comic Con with today. They're all part of the collective. Go check out all these podcasts. These are great, guys. If you love what you hear now, you'll love these other ones, so check them out. You can find us as well. Look, I'm going to streamline this as well. You can find us on an email, itkmoonnight@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Discord, Get Vocal, and we have a website too. All the links are available on this episode, this podcast episode, so just check out the links to them, and you can check out previous issues, you can check out newsletters, it's all there. iTunes ratings, if you want to leave a review, that would be very much appreciated. Would love to get a 5-star review from you. If not, let us know how we can improve the show. We're always happy to adapt and evolve, and always happy to hear from you. And finally, you can catch us on all good podcast catches. I've got a whole heap here. We've got Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Podcast Republic, TuneIn. It's all here. You can actually even listen to the show via Twitter and on our Libsyn website. And as mentioned as well, this is simulcast right now on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So you can actually just use that link to get the uncensored, unadulterated version of the show right here. So thank you very much, Loonies. It's been a blast. Hopefully the poison water has faded, and hopefully Khonshu can come out from the back seat of that car, hiding there, waiting for some other unsuspecting victim. Hopefully he can pop up to the Grant Mansion, say hello again. But yeah, wishing him well. And as always, I've got to sign off by saying, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.